Hey, everybody. As recruiters, we all know that hiring can be one of the most challenging parts of running a business. Whether you're a startup looking to build a dream team or a well established company aiming to streamline your recruitment process, the right tools make all the difference. TeamTailor is powerful all in one recruitment software your candidates and team will love. It's not just a piece of software, it's a way of working. With TeamTailor, you get everything you need in one place: powerful analytics, an AI assistant, customizable workflows, powerful integrations, and more. Plus, TeamTailor is easy to use and implement. You can onboard hiring managers with minimal training and get started right away thanks to an easy implementation and an intuitive, user-friendly interface. 94% of users report better team collaboration, and 97% see an increase in qualified candidates. 89% of customers say their hiring process is faster. And if you're focused on the candidate experience, TeamTailor's candidate experience is at the heart of the ATS. Just ask any of the 4 million candidates who connect with customers every month. Join the ranks of over 125,000 recruiters and more than 8,500 companies like Oatly, Porsche, OneFlow, and Solo Stove, who have transformed their recruitment with TeamTailor. Discover the new way to attract and hire top talent and see the results for yourself. You're here with Anessa Fike, otherwise known as the Queen of Fractional HR. She's the author of The Revolution of Work, Fuck the Patriarchy, and The Workplace It Built. She's also the CEO and founder of Fike Co, a fractional consulting firm that specializes in people HR and talent executive leadership with companies that are experiencing a growth or transition. She's worked with more than 120 organizations globally and has led many of them as a chief people officer, head of people, or head of talent. She's an industry leader on all things people and talent, and you can catch her fire content on LinkedIn. Anessa, where are you based? What are you working on?
Yeah, so I'm in Raleigh, North Carolina, although I'm probably going to be in California for most of June, so I'm looking forward to it.
That's awesome. Is Raleigh home?
Yeah, Raleigh is home.
Very cool. I think I saw something that you posted maybe last month. You can correct me. You're on the road like a gazillion weeks out of the year.
A lot. So I would say in 2023, I was traveling 38 out of 52 weeks last year. This year, it's not as much travel, which is kind of nice. I can take a little breather. But yeah, last year was 38 out of 52 weeks.
That's bonkers. And I'll call it out. Like you're traveling in style too.
I try, like if you're gonna spend your time, I always say like you might as well spend it well. And so if you're able to, right, if you're at the point in your life where you can do that, then go for it.
Absolutely. What were some of the highlights and favorite places you went to last year?
Oh my gosh. So I would say like RecFest was a big highlight, right? We actually met each other in real life there, met so many amazing people at RecFest. I'm actually looking forward to it this year as well. I'll be back in Nashville in September for the US version. Um, won't be at the UK version this year, but I think next year probably. So really looking forward to that. My family and I, we have sort of this maximum flexibility that we've built into our lives. So I have the fractional business. My husband actually works with me in the business and he joined right before COVID. And then we homeschool our son. And so we do a lot of trips around, the year just because we have that maximum flexibility and are able to do that. So we love California. We love London. London's actually one of our favorite cities. And so for me, it's always like going back to those places where you feel zen and where you can take a minute. And looking forward to doing that for the month of June because California is one of my zen places. So giving myself that time, that brain space to get kind of creative and think about actually what's next in the world and what I want to focus on.
Yeah, I think that's something that I appreciate about the way you live this intentional life, but still being very plugged into tech culture,
Hmm.
startups, being a practitioner, doing the work. Like when I see your posts and where you're next, I feel like I'm staying in the loop on what you're up to, and it's not like you're living a life of vacation. Like you're out there doing the work,
Hmm.
and I think you emulate for a lot of people like a new way of doing things and a way to
Yeah.
be more intentional with your like personal and professional identity.
Yeah, I really when I started my business almost 11 years ago, which seems ridiculous to think about, 11 years ago. It'll be 11 years this July. When I actually started it, I wanted to design my business and my work around what I wanted my life to look like and be like. So that is actually why I started into the fractional space, because I didn't want it to look like the 9 to 5. I did not want it to look like an agency model. I wanted to be very intentional and thoughtful about what I wanted my life to look like. And since then, I've sort of never looked back. And so if my thoughts are, if I'm going to be fractional, if I'm going to work for myself, I might as well make it what I want it to be, or else what am I doing it for?
What does that look like? Is a great phrase. Tell us, like, what does it look like? Are you like, do you have a home office? Do you have a
Yeah.
MacBook? Do you have like a Starlink? Like, what do you do to jet set and
Yes,
actually get stuff done? Do you go on site with clients? What does it
I
look like?
do. I do sometimes. I would say the bulk of the work is virtual. And so I'm actually not a Mac user. I'm a PC user. And so I know a lot of people are going to be like, boo, which is okay. I'm okay being a PC user. Um, for me, it's like a laptop, a big carry-on bag, a couple of books. I'm really big. You can blame my friend Hiba for getting me into like the fantasy book world again. I'm really big into like the dragons and the fairies and like the vampires and stuff, and getting back into reading for fun again. So you'll probably find a couple of those books. But I have a home office. We used to actually have an office in downtown Raleigh for our business, and then during COVID, it just didn't make sense, and so we sort of gave that up. And my husband and I both work from home. So my husband works in the business with me. He joined me right before COVID, which was like actually perfect timing. And I have my own office. He has his own space. We homeschool our son. He has his space in our house as well. And so we have the privilege to have a house that we had built actually again right before COVID. I don't know how this timing just worked out, but it did. And we moved in right at the start of COVID. But we had intentional spaces already built out in our home, almost like we had prepared for COVID without knowing it was coming.
Yeah.
And so then what does it look like from that? It's really just designing with intentionality. A lot of people may not know this about me, but I also have an autoimmune disorder. And so my energy levels at any given point probably top out at about 65% of what normal human energy levels are. I've known I've had this autoimmune disorder since I was in first grade. So I literally do not remember what having full energy feels like. So for me, I work in spurts. There are times where if I feel energized and I feel good, I will do that work. And then there are times where I will take 2 or 3 days off. And I know what that looks like now to optimize it for my time. And I'm able to do that in a way that works for me. And then I'm actually, over the last year, I've gotten a heck of a lot better. I've always been decent about this, but I've gotten a heck of a lot better over the last year of really putting in thoughtful moments of breaks and self-care so that I'm not even tiptoeing into the burnout category. I have been burned out. I've burnt myself out many, many times over my career. And I just refuse at this point, as I'm getting close to 40, to do that anymore to myself. I've also made a new commitment to myself this year that I won't go back to Vegas for conferences. And
Yeah.
so Vegas is one of those places where it seems like every HR conference wants to be held. And it's fine. I love seeing the people, but the actual casino environment, the smoke, the atmosphere, it doesn't work well with me. And so I've actually made an additional commitment to myself this year that Transform was the last conference that I was going to attend in Las Vegas. And now, if it's in Las Vegas, I'm not going to do it moving forward. So, just getting really thoughtful, putting those boundaries in place and holding steady to those boundaries has been really what it's looked like for me. And it also evolves and changes. So, sometimes we think something is right, and then it's like, well, that's not quite right. Let me adjust it. And having the ability and the permission to do that in a fractional space is really nice. But people can actually do that if they work for someone else too. It's putting those boundaries in place, evolving, testing and iterating to what works for you and when you're able to optimize your time. And I think that a lot of people think that they can't do that in a 9 to 5, but they actually can, to an extent. And so I think it's just looking at the hours a little differently and how you can set it up.
Those are great tactical takeaways. Sometimes I think people make these big blanket decisions that impact their lives and their hierarchy of needs, and they make these job transitions. Or I hear it from a lot of folks in HR where they say they're burned out or they have compassion fatigue, or they're looking for their next thing. And my response is always like, why don't you just go take a 2-week vacation?
Yeah. Take a beat. Just take a beat. See
Like,
what you feel like. Right.
I think that's what most people need, is just like
Yes.
a proper vacation, where it's putting down the phone. It's,
Yeah.
deleting those distraction apps.
Yeah. And actually, like, I'm a really big fan of like several mini vacations throughout the year, because I think if you just, it's like that carrot right at the end of the year. If we think about vacations in the same way that we think about bonuses and performance reviews, right? So I think that we all know this now around performance reviews. It's like the reason annual reviews don't work is because you're just holding a carrot at the end of the year. So people are going to do fine work throughout the year, most people, and then just really like kick it up a notch right before performance time and bonus time, and then kind of slack off a little bit after, right? Like it's just our human dynamic. It's what we do. And I think if you consistently had in the way of vacations, instead of that one vacation you're looking to a year, if you broke it up and did one like every quarter, a mini vacation every month, your mental health and your ability to not go into that burnout mechanism is actually going to be much more resilient.
Yeah. And that takes a lot of discipline. I'm a huge proponent of the casual Wednesday.
Yes.
Didn't you propose fractional Mondays?
Oh yeah, I love not doing anything on a Monday. Definitely no meetings on a Monday, and really like sparingly on Fridays. I kind of reserve Friday meetings for like friends. So it's kind of like, okay, I'm going to only meet with my friends in the HR space on Friday. And it actually, if you laugh more, we all know laughter is great medicine. I love like getting sort of out of the day to day on a Friday and laughing more, so that your body and your nervous system has this sort of natural transition into the weekend. And, it's really hard to like just stop work and then go into the weekend. So having a nice transition is nice.
Where do I send my like insurance information? I feel like this is like the tactical things that are useful for my life that I'd get from a therapist. This is
Yes.
great.
Well, and that's all about the revolution of work, right? Can you imagine how much healthier we all would be if we all just looked at work in this way and we all did this, and then our organizations supported us all doing this? And that's my big grand idea for the future, is if we can all just get really clear on what we need and what our boundaries are, and can we put those in place in a creative way, then our businesses are going to be more profitable. We're going to all feel better. We're just going to be kinder as a society because we're not like curmudgeonly just trudging along in the 9 to 5. So anyway, that's my big bold idea.
I actually think we can learn from Gen Z in this
Mhm.
capacity. I'm also approaching 40. And when I think about some of the attributes and behaviors and content that Gen Zers are putting out,
Yeah.
um, some of it I'm actually energized by.
Mhm. I'm
Like
very hopeful. Yeah.
yeah, same. And I keep hearing from like other friends that have, preteen and teenage children
Mhm.
that, they talk about not wanting to be on their devices. And
Mhm.
I'm really hopeful for that. As a like aging millennial, I experience almost like a melancholic nostalgia for a more analog life.
Yes, I
Like what would
consistently say this, that we're trying to get back to the 90s, right?
Yeah, like
And it
what would it be like to be a dad in the late 90s? And how can
right.
I bring some of those behaviors that we don't experience into my real life? And maybe that's like locking my phone in the glove box, or maybe it's
Mhm.
not having work email on my phone.
I really enjoyed growing up not having social media. I don't know about you, but I really enjoyed not having it, especially in like high school. Like I had a Nokia phone, the big ones, not even
Oh
like the
yeah.
flip ones. I had the big phones, and that was my first phone. It's funny because I actually still have the same cell phone number that I had then. I've always had just one cell phone number. And but I really enjoyed growing up that way. And then as I see where we all are now with Gen Z, and everyone's, like you said, trying to get off devices, even if we think about like privacy, right? We want like privacy back. Like even these a lot of these laws and regulations that are being put in place is because we're trying to actually claw back at that. We want some more privacy. And if you think about fashion, music, movies, TV shows, how many of them are we seeing that are taking snippets from the 90s and bringing it back? So we've seen it with fashion. We've seen it with music. There are consistently new songs where I'm like, wait, I know that beat. This is not the song that beat came from. And then, similarly with like Ghostbusters being redone in a different way. And there's all of these movies and shows coming back. And I think it's this nostalgic moment. Part of me also wonders if it's just, oh, the millennials are now the bulk of the consumer base, right? And so they're appealing to us in that way. Of course, there's probably something there. But my son is 10. He's in Gen Alpha. I think technically he's in Generation Alpha. But it's interesting because there are so many things that I'm really hopeful that his generation is going to carry forth that I think Gen Z is paving the way for now. And in small part, I hope that we at least started the paving of that as millennials. We were the bridging generation. We were sort of the ones who didn't grow up with technology, but then had it and taught everyone else how to do it. So we're that bridging generation, which is really nice. And I think we sort of started down that path, hopefully for Gen Z, and then they can make it better, and then Gen Alpha can make it better.
One of the things I think about in the world of work, so at this point we have, I think somebody once shared this statistic with me that it's the largest generational diversity that our workforce has seen.
Yeah.
And then what is the pattern matching and the evolution of the attributes, the morals, the ethics, the competencies that pair up with the like majority populace of those generations? So if Gen Z are the children of Gen X, what are those attributes of Gen X in the workplace and how they think about work that they have maybe passed down to Gen Z? How has Gen Z evolved those? And how we could potentially see a corner from like a sociological perspective. I don't know. Adam Grant maybe has something on this, or if he's looking for a new study.
Right. And it's really interesting because I've seen, you think about some of this, right? And a lot of, for better or worse, a lot of kids want to do things sometimes different than their parents did, right? So some of it is like, well, we probably wouldn't expect more of the same, but it would be slightly different, but probably still have some lingering, right? But what's interesting that I found, and I've heard this from a lot of Gen Z folks right now that are in the workforce and coming into the workforce, is really there are very, very little of them that actually want to be people managers. They do not want to manage people. And I think that's fascinating and something that we're going to have to think about in the next 5 to 10 years, because what if we had no middle management? That's a real thought, right? We're really not going to have a ton of middle management if no one wants to manage. How do we org design around that? How do we think about that from a revolution of work standpoint? And the other piece that I always think is interesting is if it's in an organization that's large enough to have middle management, I consistently say that the true culture of your organization actually is how your middle managers feel.
Yes.
Because they consistently have the most put on them, right? So they've got their own job to do most of the time, plus management of their teams. Most of the time, they're not set up for success in their org, so they're not given the proper training, the proper resources to do their jobs well and to develop their people well. So they're really thrown this to-do list of about 1,000 things and given very little resources to do it. And that's going to be really interesting because I feel like they're also the glue that keeps a lot of organizations together. And if we remove that glue, where does that leave us in organizations? So that's going to be fascinating. I actually am talking and working with our clients right now that we're working with Fike Co. We're talking through that because they're looking in the next 5 years of what is talent going to be, and they hire a lot of early career, talent. And it's interesting to think about what are you going to do in 5 years if you have less than half of the middle managers you have today, if you don't have less than that, right? So let's just talk about if you had half the amount of middle managers, what would you do? And then let's talk about if you had no middle managers, what would you do? And I think that the organizations not talking about that now are going to be supremely behind the eight ball when when that comes to fruition.
It's no secret middle management makes or breaks a company,
Mm-hmm.
particularly in a scale up technology company. You
Mm-hmm.
have all of these high performing ICs
Mm-hmm.
that get moved into a people management role because it's tied to their financial security and advanced earnings. There should absolutely be parallel paths around earnings
Right.
and comp leveling and bands for folks to pursue that IC path. Your best engineer within a tech company is not a people leader. They're
Right.
an engineer. And I
And no
think of
one
that the
asks
same
them.
for recruiting.
Right. No one even asks people most of the time if they even want to manage. They're just like, here's your promotion. You're a manager now. And it's like, wait, did we even ask if this is something they wanted? No. Okay, cool. And then we just kind of expect them to take it, right? Which most people do because it's the next ladder on the corporate, the next rung on the corporate ladder and more money. So most people take it.
And the phrase I keep seeing is like career lattice versus career
Mm-hmm.
ladder. I think that's fascinating. And it's a challenge too, because it requires a level of self awareness
Yeah.
from employees and candidates, because the market recalibrates the value of an employee's skills
Mm-hmm.
through the peaks and valleys,
Right.
often tied to capital markets and
Right.
interest rates. So, right now, we're experiencing a moment where a lot of job seekers and candidates that have been laid off are very much out of alignment with compensation and the level and values of the
Mm-hmm.
skill or value of the skills they have, because
Yeah.
we hit this high watermark in the last few years, particularly in tech startups where non-technical roles are making monster comp, and that's awesome. But what happens when you're laid off and you're looking for
Right.
your next job and it's 60% of your last comp?
Right.
That's something that I see a lot in the market right now. What are you seeing with candidates and job seekers and employees around comp and skills and leveling, and just how companies are managing hiring?
Yeah, it's really tough because, there's a lot of really skilled, really great people in the market right now. And especially in terms of our space and talent and HR, we probably both know so many people who are super talented and on the market. And then we consistently see, at least I do these, VP of people, chief people officer roles for 150K. And it's like, what? That makes no sense, right? Like you should be at 200K and above, right? 150K and HRBP can make 150K. And so I think we've seen this, right? We've seen this cycle of we have talent and talent's so great and let's pay talent and HR and people and they're really important and we care about our people. And then we see these drops where it's like, okay, people forgot everything they said before and then it'll come back and then it'll drop again. What I think is really interesting as we enter the next, decade of work is we have the Gen Z piece, we have the middle manager piece that we just talked about. And then we also have this piece of I'm under no illusion we are all going to have a lot of mess to clean up over the next 2 years because a lot of organizations have just really quickly and not thoughtfully cut their talent and HR teams and they thought they could do it on their own. And it's creating a mess. We all know it's creating a mess. We've seen it create a mess before. We know how these cycles go. And so we are going to have to clean up a lot of that mess in the next couple of years. So I actually see that swinging back. I'm starting to see it swing back. And it's almost like these business leaders that think they know business, right? It's almost like we need to teach them about business because the people who actually know how to do this sustainably are those in the functions they keep cutting. And so we've all seen this. We know how this goes. Ask any talent person what the market's doing, and they're going to be the most relevant source of what the market actually is like. It's not going to be the CEO of the org. It's those in talent and HR who know what the market is doing. And so it's really fascinating to me when you see all like business leaders consistently say that, we don't know business. I'm like, no, we know business. The things you're doing just really showcase that you don't know business, right? So it's really interesting to me of that like dichotomy. I'm like, are we projecting much? Sounds like it. And so one of those things where I think it's going to be fascinating with where we end up 3 years from now, 5 years from now. because I do think it's going to level out. I don't think we're going to come back to the 2020, 2021 heights of what we saw in talent and HR. I don't think we'll ever get back there. The pendulum swung too far.
Sure.
And I think it'll even out a little bit more.
Yeah, the moment was the headline when there were more recruiter openings on LinkedIn than software engineers, and IC recruiters were making 150K, which is awesome for like recruiting folks.
Right.
I think we all work to rent our brain power to have financial security.
Yes.
But one of the pieces you mentioned about a mess to clean up, I believe in the next few years, is the mess of underemployment. So there's this notion of great talent is on sale right now because folks have been through layoffs. So that's why you see like director plus going into IC roles, or like VPs in like down leveled roles because like they're willing to take a 50% pay cut.
Because they need to put, food on the table. Yeah.
Exactly. And then on the other side of it, we see people leaving the workforce.
Going fractional. Yep.
And then we see people going fractional. And I think going fractional is a fantastic solution to the underemployment problem. A couple of reasons. I'd love to dive in on fractional with you since you are the queen of fractional. But let's start with what the hell is fractional? Where did this term come from? How do you define it?
So it's interesting. People ask me this so often, and it depends on who you ask and what industry they're in, and also what their business is and how they define it. Here's how I define it. If you think about strategy and then the execution operational side of that strategy, fractional to me is both things. Consulting is just the operational side of of the strategy, and advising is just the strategy. So fractional puts the two together. You have the expertise typically across several industries, across several organizations, and you're typically director level and above. I don't foresee fractional working for most people that are not at that at least director level, or they've been at a couple of organizations and run teams before, because you just don't have the expertise and the knowledge basis to provide what you need to provide in a fractional space. I think there are several people out there that are saying that fractional could be anyone. And I don't think that's true, because if you're early in your career and you're trying to do these things, you're just a freelancer, especially if you've never run a team or you've never developed a team. And there's a couple indicators for me as to what makes fractional versus like a freelancer or a consultant. One is, have you worked with a board before? Have you done board presentations? Have you been in board meetings? Have you worked across portcos with firms, right? Like those are all elements of a fractional executive, because it is very common that you're going to be in that spot if you're brought into an organization as a fractional exec. You will have to interact with the board. You will have to be in board presentations and make those board presentations, et cetera. The other piece is when you're looking at strategy as a fractional person that's brought in, you have to be able to look at strategy across the whole org, and you have to be able to define strategy for the entire org. If you've only done strategy for a small snippet of an organization or for one track or for one department, then you are not probably at that fractional level yet, because when you're brought in, the expertise level that is almost expected is that you are able to look across the entire business and help the business move forward. And that's also why, like I always say, you can actually make a lot of impact in a short amount of time being fractional, because you're able to connect the dots quickly, assess the information quickly. The listening tour isn't 3 to 6 months. It's like 2 weeks max. And you know how to connect the dots in order to maximize the business, help it grow in a thoughtful, intentional way, but also in a way that actually people enjoy working there. And if you can do that, that can be majorly impactful and save the business a lot of money and avoid a lot of pitfalls along the way.
100%. Yeah, it's that combination of like strategy and tactics. That's the way I think about it. When I talk to folks that are curious about hiring people fractionally, one of the questions is like, well, how do I think about onboarding? And it's like, no, there is no onboarding. Like if you're hiring, like if you're hiring somebody that's truly fractional, they're going to apply pattern matching. They're going to provide you with deliverables. They're going to come in and be turnkey pretty much week one and it's making that exponential impact week over week. I like that you mentioned the business impact of seeing different business groups and providing strategic lens across the entire business or through a few different groups. I think about that as like a pie-shaped skill set or a comb-shaped skill set. And I think somebody fits the fractional mold if they are like director plus fractional CXO. You're an executive, you're in the boardroom, you're making strategy decisions for the entire product and business and company.
Yeah.
But then there are these like supercharged ICs that might find some success as fractional because they've had a couple of wins. Maybe they've worked at some prestigious companies that other companies are building and they say, oh, we need somebody who built the product at insert company because we're trying to build that now.
Exactly.
They could probably plug and play. And I think depending on their area of expertise, they probably have like a skill set that aligns. But I'm with you. I think there are ways for earlier career individuals to find flexibility and find fulfillment in work through platforms like Upwork, where you can be a contractor, maybe put up your business, hang your shingle, have some fun with it, put yourself out there, dip a toe in the water. But true, sustainable, fractional as a living is definitely how you described it.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting too, because like there's so many freelancing opportunities for people with skill sets, right? And I always say it's like, to me, it's like either very creative or very technical skill sets, or like you have this, like you said, you've worked and you've done this really cool programmatic thing at this organization that everyone knows, right? And typically it's one of those things. And I've seen people make really good businesses around those things, which is amazing. And it's like, oh, for instance, I need to move my employee from the US to Europe. And it's like, I don't, if you're an HR person of one or a team that's never done that before, is there someone you can call? Yeah. There's someone who has that skill set and is used to doing that. Yesterday, I was just in an organization locally that we meet every month of HR leaders. And there's a person in our group that's like, we're restructuring and I need to basically have this restructuring happen, but I don't have the time to give them the guidance and support that I would like to have. And I'm like, there are people who do that, right? You can outsource that. You can bring in a fractional person who's actually really empathetic and guiding this person, these people through that. And actually, they're going to have a much better experience than if you try to do it on your own because you just don't have the time. And so I think that there's these little like pockets of people that do these specific things, to your point. And if you think that there's a possibility that someone like that exists, it's probable that someone like that exists.
Yeah, and I think that goes back to this idea of how do we evolve and have the revolution of work for people leaders as a whole. And when I think of a chief people officer, it's like, somebody who came up through the HR business partner track, employee relations, maybe they've got a legal background, they've taken some employment law, maybe they've done like hardcore compliance. I actually lean on the other side of it. It's like, I want to see more chief people officers that come from recruiting backgrounds.
Yay. I'm clapping because I also agree with that. I think that someone who's come up through talent, I love that part, but go ahead, continue.
No, I was just going to ask your take on that. What are the benefits for an organization to have a chief people officer who came up through recruiting?
So I love this because I think, and you'll probably agree with me here just because I think we've chatted about this similarly as well, but there's such there's a dynamic of the business that you get in talent that you really just aren't able to get in many other spots in the org. And what I mean by that is, you know enough of what everyone at that org does to be dangerous, right? You know enough about the software engineers and how to talk to them about their tech stack and, oh, well, C#, well, cool, you can do this over here, right? Like, you know enough. You don't know how to code, but you know enough. And then you know what the marketing side is doing, and you know how they interact with different organizations inside your org. You know the inner workings of the organization probably better than the execs do. And so having that, starting out at that skill set, just understanding the business that you're working in and just understanding business period in general is really helpful. And I have found that those that those CPOs, those heads of people that really start in talent actually have a really, really good business acumen. And then you also have the dynamic of understanding the market, because, we talked about this earlier in this pod around the most relevant source of what's the market doing and what are the economic parameters and levers that we can pull. Your talent team knows that because they're the ones in the thick of it every day, and understanding where to find those bits of information and those bits of really, really relevant data. As a chief people officer, if you've never done the talent side, it's really hard to know what that looks like and to know what to ask and to know where to look. And I think it also, for me, it gives me the appreciation of truly understanding what it takes to get each and every person in the organization. And I also feel like those who maybe have not had that talent experience and are CPOs, they're like, can you just get this person in? And it's like, do you understand all the steps it took to get this person in the door? Why would we not want to make them feel good? Why would we not want to make them feel like they're a part of something bigger, and making sure we're listening to them? Because it took months of work to get them here, probably, right? And I think there's this just like appreciation for the work and the talent and the uniqueness that we bring in through talent portals. And I also think that when it's a leader from the talent side, we're not pulling people into the organization just to conform. That's not our ideal, right? We want to bring in a myriad of people from all sorts of backgrounds and all sorts of skill sets, and to create a much better, more diverse, but also stronger organization by bringing a lot of different things into play. And I think, when you're a people leader and you have that perspective, you can also then see where the gaps are in your skill sets easier, because we do that on a day-to-day in the talent side. You're like, oh, this person has this, and this, and they don't have this, but that's okay because this other person over here has this, and this, but they don't have this other thing. We're consistently looking at skill sets, and we're consistently looking at what do we need on the team that we don't have already, and then taking that up several layers as a leader and looking across the space. I actually think it's something that more CPOs would benefit from if they had that expertise. So just to say that there's a lot of skill sets you pick up, a lot of understanding that you pick up, a lot of business acumen that you pick up in the talent space, just being there and doing the things that you really miss out on if you don't have that experience as a chief people officer.
I agree with all of that. Recruiters just get stuff done.
Yeah.
And I think in an earlier stage company, if you're going 0 to 1, if you're a startup, you're going to scale from 2 employees to 250 or 500. Like, yeah, go with somebody who's coming from a recruiting track, because they're just going to move so much faster at a higher velocity.
Isn't there, right? Like, there's always a little hustle in every recruiter, I feel like.
Yeah. And I appreciate that in other recruiters, just because we're a fun group. Typically, we've had different life experiences that haven't always been on like the straight and narrow, or have come from perhaps privileged experiences with elite degrees at elite schools. All the recruiter friends that I know, like, they've done some cool stuff in their life. And to me, that makes it interesting as friends for those Friday hangouts.
Or they fell into it and had no idea that they were going to be recruiters.
And when you think about the piece that you mentioned on how do you grow and scale an organization's people program without mid-level managers, what's glaringly obvious for me is when recruiters in a company, if they've hired the first 200 people at a company, when you have those first early conversations with someone as a candidate, you pick up signal on their true motivations in life, in work. And that database of knowledge that grows allows pattern matching for a mentorship program and an informal structure for a people program where you don't need people managers, but you're able to pair up folks, and you have that ability to say, you know what? I spoke with Anessa and she was our first people hire, but we just brought on this social media person as employee 175. I think they need to be in a pod or a cohort, and they need to share their ideas.
Yeah. And it's also like, isn't it interesting too, because we have these relationships that develop and evolve by being on the talent side. And especially if you've grown an organization, you kind of feel like a curator of the organization in a way. And it
Totally.
also feels like you're okay, like these are all my people because I brought all these people in, right? And there's this like it's like this it's this pride, right? Like it's this pride of I know these people. I know these people because they trusted in me and I was the first person to talk to them. And I was cognizant of the relationship I was building with them and they trusted me with their relationship back. And so then you are then creating trust in the organization based on being that first person that they're talking to, right? And so there's just so much power in that that I think that people don't always realize and they don't always use to the best of their ability in an organization too. So yeah, love all of that.
I think of it as just like, what is an early stage people person anyway? It's just
Mm-hmm.
operations. Like,
Right.
I don't really care about
Yes.
titles, about roles. Like, if you're an early stage startup, like, you're an operations person, you got a few
You got to get
specific
stuff
skill
done.
sets.
Yeah.
And when it comes to like an early stage startup, like the first people person is usually like the first internal comms person until they can't
Mm-hmm.
scale it. And it's like, okay,
Oh
then we'll
yeah.
bring in a comms person.
Oh my gosh, that was like one of my I joke when I was at the Motley Fool, that was one of my like 8 jobs. I joke, and then it became its own job. And I'm like, okay, cool, well, that's fun. I don't know what that person's doing all day, but like because it was an eighth of my job. But cool, cool. I'm glad we're doing that, you know?
And that's how you have development of skills. And that's why I'm so motivated and inspired by the future of work for HR and talent and recruiting, is because you get these opportunities to flex new on the job skills trainings.
Mm-hmm.
Because if we wind up in a post human resources world
Mm-hmm.
where AI replaces us, like, well,
Yeah.
hey, maybe you can get a job as an internal communications person.
Yeah.
Um, Maybe you
So
can
many
leave recruiting and
transferable
go into
skill sets.
sales. Like,
Yeah.
I
And
think
even
the
like
bar.
yeah, I was just going to say, even like coming into the recruiting field, right? Like I fell into recruiting as my first foray into HR. And, I was a journalist before that. And so for me, it was like, okay, these skill sets transfer really well because I'm asking people questions, I'm gauging their body language. Like it is very much a transfer of skill. And I don't know, I've actually met a few journalists that fell into talent, but it's actually not as common as you would think it would be for the similarity of skill sets that you do and that you have in that space.
There's a couple attributes of journalism that I think of are inherent to recruiting. One is curiosity.
Mm-hmm.
Two is seeking truth.
Yes.
If that is our North Star, we're trying to extract data and information for truth.
Mm-hmm.
And I think those are great principles to have. I'm biased. I interned in college as a journalist and thought I was going to be a writer at a paper, but sitting in the newsroom, they downsized 40% during the Great Recession. So
Yep.
I wound up driving a forklift.
Yeah.
When I think about journalism, it's kind of meta for me. I'm working with a company right now in the media space, in the newsletter space, covering tech. That's fulfilling. How do you think about journalism and creating content and chasing truth in the
Yeah.
organizations you serve?
Oh my gosh. Well, you probably know this about me already, but I've always sort of had this like, I just describe it as a fire in me to seek truth. Like I've always just been a truth seeker, even when I was younger. Like if you talk to friends of mine from middle school, high school, they're going to be like, "Oh, this was Anessa back in the day too. Like she was always trying to go find the truth and seek the truth." There's something in me, and I think there's probably something in a lot of us who go down that journalism path of the transparency is key, right? And I think to your point of internal comms, there's a reason why all of us then work on internal comms too, because we're actually just trying to push that transparency forward. We're trying to push that truth forward to other people. And it's this consistent, you know, also the trend matching and the dot connecting of something's not right here, something's off. Let me find what's off. Let me find what's the truth, and let me get at it so that I can understand it, and then transparently talk about it. And so for me, I really enjoy the HR space, the talent space, the internal comm space, the journalism space, all for that reason of I think once we're more transparent, we find that truth and we're truth seekers. When we talk about that truth and we name it, and even if it's harsh and it's hard to talk about, if we still do it, We're talking about it, naming it, and then making it better for other people. And it's that last piece that is that fire in me that I describe of like, I am very, very clear that my sole purpose for being on this earth is to make work better for people who do not look like me. And if I achieve that, then I will have done the thing I was meant to do on this earth. And so by getting to all of that truth and talking about it and sometimes exposing hard truths, we can actually see what it is and get past it and work on it to make it better for other people. And so I think that for me is it's a sort of like a predeterminate for what you do after that.
One of the truths that I believe in my heart that is trying to be silenced right now is diversity, equity, inclusion. What you just said is a perfect segue to that. What are you seeing in the current state of DE&I? How did we
Yeah.
get into this? Where do we go from here?
My goodness, we could have a whole pod about this. We could talk for hours. Um, I'm tired. Some days I'm tired, but then I feel guilty for being tired because I'm white and I shouldn't be tired. But I am. I get tired and then I get feisty and then I hustle back into like, okay, now I'm gonna do something again. But I go through this, I think we all do in this space. I think there was a lot of words said a few years ago. There was a lot of money put in place and not a lot done actionably. And I'm getting really tired of people saying that these human dynamics, especially when it's dynamics that don't include white people on both sides, that they're political and it's bullshit. And I am so tired of people using politics as a shield of, well, I don't want to talk about that because I don't want to be political. It's not about politics, it's about human beings and doing what's right. And I think that people who throw up politics are, and this is going to be very harsh, but I do 100% believe this, are cowards. I legitimately think that if you are trying to say, I don't want to talk about Palestine and Rafah and Gaza because I think it's political, I think that's cowardly. And I think that in 20 years, if you have kids, are your kids going to think you acted appropriately in that right way? Right. And for me, these are human dynamics. If it was you, you would want someone to help you. If it was your family, you would want someone to care. And it's interesting. I've seen a lot of James Baldwin quotes recently on social media. I have a master's in English, and actually, my master's thesis was on James Baldwin. And so when I see James Baldwin, a lot of people probably know who he is, but they may not have read his entire works. I have. And when I see it, I believe it. And then, even just talking about the worldview right now and what's happening across the world, there's no excuse for some of this behavior. And if we don't talk about it internally with organizations or we don't act like it's happening, it doesn't mean it's not happening. It just means that you're oblivious to it and you're not talking about it. And it's not making anything better by not talking about it. Nothing is ever made better by pushing it into a corner in the dark somewhere and then not talking about it, right? So for me, I think there's this need to push leaders to actually do something, to not just talk about it and when it's easy and throw money at it when it's easy, but to do the work when it's hard. That is the real measure of a human for me is, are you going to do the thing when it's hard? And if you're not, then move aside for someone who will. Because I think that's the only way that we can also make change.
That was very eloquent. With more precision, what advice would you have to a tactical HR practitioner or an executive that is perhaps trying to clean up the mess in Slack right now that they have? The conversations around social issues, culture wars, politics.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen some companies have new sweeping policies about just no discussion of politics or culture issues, social issues at work. What would you do if you had a client that called you up today? And maybe you have a client, but how can somebody bring more clarity to the humanity side of it at work instead of just pushing it aside?
Right. I would say this is, I think, for this and for a lot of things, leaders getting really honest with where they are and accepting feedback. And I think if leaders got a lot better at accepting feedback and listening, we'd have a much better work environment in our country and across the world. And I think that it starts with listening and understanding where your people are, understanding how they're feeling, understanding that we're living in a time where we're hearing about really awful things every day. We haven't experienced that for most of our lives, right? We just not consistently and not as horrific as has been happening as consistently as it has been happening. And there is a mechanism that if you want people to block that out and just do their work, it's not going to be possible. We're humans, right? That's not going to be possible. And if you are able to do it, you're not able to do it for very long. So I think listening and being open to feedback, understanding where your people are, not being afraid to have hard conversations, not being afraid to mess up. Anyone in the DEI space will tell you every day that we mess up more times than we don't, but we consistently keep talking about it. We consistently keep at it. The number of times I've messed up, not said the right thing, not done the right thing in DEI are probably in the hundreds at this point, but I keep doing it. You are going to mess up. It's just what we're going to do as humans. We're never going to have the answers all the time. So I think just being okay with that and starting there and starting from a place of understanding is really key. I think the other thing I would say for leaders is you've got to decide what people, and I mean not even just people in your org, just people, what humans, what they mean to you. Because if humans mean something to you, any human, all humans, then you have to talk about these things. You have to dive into these world events. There's no longer a place where an organization can act like these things don't exist.
I agree. I think it comes down to, does a leader see their team as HR serving the function of human capital management or people management?
Right.
And how do we tap into the humanity of others to activate their highest potential so they feel fulfilled in their journey towards financial security and prosperity so that they can achieve their goals in life? We're here for such a short amount of time. Work should be a bright spot.
Yeah. We spend enough time doing it, right?
One of the questions I wanted to ask you is around DEI and fractional and consulting and influence. Is it possible for somebody to truly have an impact if they are a DEI practitioner in-house? I think when we see more folks going fractionally and taking a leap and being that consultant, they can say the things that they perhaps would not have the ability to say when their financial security is tied to their W-2 tax status with the organization that they're trying to instill change within.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
Oh gosh, I think it's a lot easier when you're fractional. I think you can make some change when you're in-house, but not as much and not as quickly. And what I've seen is those people that are in-house, they get tired and they get exhausted and burnt out quicker. So I do think it's much, much easier fractionally. To that said, I think there are things that people can do internally, especially if you've got leaders that actually listen and are open to feedback and have conversations. You can absolutely do it, but you almost have to have the right leaders in place to do that, even from an in-house perspective and from a fractional perspective. There are still many orgs that we've been brought into. We've had to fire several clients over the years because they just didn't get it and they weren't open to it and they knew everything and they weren't listening, right? So you still have those. And so I would say it really depends on the leaders, but it is a heck of a lot easier to do it fractionally because you can have more freedom to say, this is the thing that you're doing wrong and let me help you fix it.
What advice do you have then for the early career professional in people ops who's passionate about making progressive changes? They're ready to bring that revolution of work in-house. but they don't have that experience to take that leap to go out fractionally.
Yeah. Don't be afraid to ask for resources, and don't be afraid to outsource some of this. Partnering, it can be really helpful. The other piece I would say is internally, if you are early in your career, figure out the person in your organization that has the most influence. Get them bought in early. And that's probably my number one tip and hack is figure out who's running the show. Sometimes it's not the CEO, sometimes it's the COO, sometimes it's the CMO, sometimes it's somebody else. Figure out who's actually running the show. Figure out who is influencing everyone else. Who does everyone listen to? Get them bought in. And if you can do that, you actually can sort of like 5x, 10x your work in that way.
Amazing. Thank you. Anessa, where can people stay in touch with your work, and where will you be next?
Oh my gosh. Okay. So I will be I'm going to be in California. I'm going to be in Napa. Retreat is putting together a one-day event for people leaders in Napa in June. So I'll be speaking there. And everyone can keep up with me on LinkedIn. So if you haven't followed me, find me on LinkedIn. And then you can also find me at fikeandco.com. So it's FIKEANDCO.com. And you can find The Revolution of Work, my book, on Amazon.
Quick plug for The Revolution of Work. One call to action I have is, if you are listening, call your local library, go to your local library's website, request the title. If we are going to ignite a revolution, we need to have this book on the shelves. It should be within your county's budget to buy a $20 book. Mm-hmm. I can't wait to see it out there. And maybe with your next book, you could be more specific in the title.
Yeah, right. I know, if there is a next book, we'll see.
Well, Anessa, this has been wonderful.
Thank you, my friend. This has been great. Yes.
I'm excited to see where you are next. I'll see you at the next conference, see you at RecFest. Mm-hmm. And there's one thing I wanted to share. It's when I see your content in my feed, I'm like always reminded of this Macklemore song, and I forget the name of the song, but it's the lyric that comes to mind is, labels out here, now they can't tell me nothing. Yeah. We give it to the people and we spread it across the country.
Well, isn't it like Poppin' Tags or something? Isn't it called Poppin' Tags?
Yeah, well, no, it's not that one. It's the one where it's I'm on my INDEPENDENT shit hustling. Yeah. And that is just like the vibe. I hear the song when I see you out there. So thank you for the work you do. Thank you for living to the beat of your own drum. And thank you for the advice you had for listeners today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on. This is great.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to the Rebel TA podcast. If you're a talent acquisition leader or a recruiter looking for a conference to attend in 2024, I'm here to tell you that RecFest is the world's largest talent acquisition conference. RecFest USA returns to Nashville, Tennessee on September 12th and 13th, 2024, and I am stoked. This is not your average conference. Shout out to Jamie Leonard and the entire crew over at RecFest who produce an incredible event. Tickets are on sale now. Don't sleep. I'll see you in Nashville.